Now, if you're like me, when you first started learning Blender, you probably tried your hand at an interior render, some ArcViz type of thing after watching a tutorial. Blender Guru. His ArcViz tutorials are fire, to be fair. But if you're like me, it did not go well. Because let's face it, that shit is hard, especially as a beginner. Like, there's so many things that have to come together, and you have to be very technically good to get a result that will look realistic. And on top of that, it takes even more to get something that is, you know, artistically good, that is satisfying, and that has good composition and color and everything. But now that I have more experience, I think I have a lot more skill than I did back then. I've gone back to try my hand at it, and I don't love it. Not gonna lie, it's not my favorite thing to do, but it can be satisfying sometimes. But what I've found is that one of the most important things for just like the mood of the scene is the lighting. And for an interior, lighting is a little bit particular. Okay, so the first sort of lighting setup that's pretty easy to do is just sunlight. It gives it a pretty natural feeling. It's easy to set up. HDRI, even like sun lamp, and you can get something like this. And just to make it clear, this is not like a finished render at all. This is a block out of an interior that I did a while ago that I found that I will be relighting for the purpose of this video. But yeah, you can see it feels very friendly, soft light coming through the window. You can see like the light goes on the wall here through this window, which I really like. And you know, sunlight is just one of those things that feels good to look at in certain scenarios, especially when it's diffused, because it's the light that we've evolved to see the most. So it really fills the full spectrum of our vision, and you can see a lot of the room in its sort of true color. But obviously, you know, you don't always want to do this, unless you do. But I don't always want to do this. So let's make it nighttime. It's nighttime. Wow, I'm really funny. This is actually, I did actually render it out though. This is not just a black square. But to sort of simulate the night, I just turned the HDRI completely off. And so now let's say we want like one lamp that's on, and I don't want to put a model, I don't want to change anything in the scene. For the purposes of this video, I'm just gonna put it behind the wall so it's there, kind of. So I'll just put in a default point light, and here is the default point light, and oh my goodness, that looks horrible. That looks horrible. Like you can see, it's literally the default Shift A point light. There you go. And I know so many people in their head right now are screaming at me, change it. And I know for a lot of people, the first sort of gut instinct is two things: change the intensity, change the color. And yeah, that's a great first step. So let's try that out. Boom. Okay, so here, instant vibe change. It's feeling a lot more cozy, you know, the warm lighting, it's not too much. It feels like it could somewhat be real, even though this, you know, the scene isn't finished, whatever. The lighting feels okay. And so that really is just, I turned the intensity down by half and I made it a nice orange color. And I think for a lot of people, this is kind of where they stop. I know for like a basic lighting setup, you don't need to play around with this too much. It'll work for sure. But since when is it'll work enough? Never. No, I'm joking. But if you want to kick it up a notch, we're going to get more into the meat of this thing. And here you go. I made a change. I made 3 changes actually. So for context, this room is actually in my house. This is the top floor of my house, my parents' house. And you know, I live here. I know what this room is supposed to look like under certain conditions, especially with a particular lamp that is there where I put the point lamp usually. So I went ahead and I grabbed the lamp and I took the light bulb out of it, and I took note of a couple things. So first of all, it's a LED. It doesn't really matter for this. 400 lumen, 4.4 watt, 2700 Kelvin. So these are the things that we really care about. Oh, and also the size of this bulb is about 4 centimeters in diameter. So now I've gone to my point light, I've reset the color, and I've changed the power to 4.4 watts, like it was on the bulb. The radius I set to 4 centimeters, because with a point light, if it's set to 0, it just treats it as like the singularity of light, which is not really accurate. Our lights are not just like little pinpricks that emit light. They have, you know, volume, and it makes it emit differently. It makes it emit a softer light, but the color is white. So how do we make it accurate? Well, I got 2700 Kelvin on that bulb, which is its black body temperature. And there's a black body temperature node in Blender, and you can put nodes on lights in cycles. Just, you know, if you didn't know that. So yeah, you can see black body node, I set it to 2700, put it in the color, and yeah, you get this really nice warm color on the light, and it's a little bit softer. It just feels more natural, and it feels right to me because I know what this is supposed to look like. It looks a lot more right. And I did skip over this 400 lumen thing. I will use that a little bit later, but for now, just know that Blender uses the unit of watt per square meter for light intensity, and there's no easy conversion from watt to square meter to lumens because it's dependent on specific frequency, like wavelength of light, which would make the math way too complicated, and I don't even know if that's possible to do in Blender. Maybe I'll experiment a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. Like, you're not trying to get specifically exactly the right precise thing because it's a render. I don't really care all that much. I'm not trying to get to a scientific level of detail here, even though that would be pretty cool. Now you may be thinking, what else is there to do here? Some of you might know already what I'm about to talk about. If you look at any sort of light fixture, any sort of lamp, the way that it emits light, the fall off is affected by the bulb, by the glass, and so there's refraction and all of that. And technically you could model that in Blender. You could use refraction caustics and make it super accurate, but your render times would be crazy, and that's way too much work to model a bulb accurately. As it's insane. Don't do it, you madman. There's something called IES, which stands for Illuminating Engineering Society. As an organization, they've sort of standardized these fall off patterns for different lights to be used in architectural concepts, designs, more stuff and more intelligent stuff than I would ever think about in my day-to-day life. But for the purposes of us, and what we care is for renders, because this is a standardized file called an IES file that will describe this light direction and fall off pattern in the render engine. And I couldn't find the IES file for the lamp that I have because it's an IKEA bulb. It's not super accessible, but for some bulbs you might be able to find it. I just found something kind of similar in fall off pattern and I stuck that in, and that got me this, which is much different. And you can really see here that the fall off from the point light is not even, it's directional. It has a little bit of pattern, difference in intensity here. And the way that I've found to do this is find the EAS texture. There's a bunch of places online you can get some. Add the IES texture node, open up the file, stick it in the strength, and you might be wondering why I have this set for the strength. And this is sort of an assumption that I'm making just based off of the results that I've seen. But an IES file has a specified lumen value, which for this one was 813, I believe. And so I just took the ratio of my desired lumen, which was 400, and so I just divided 400 by 813, and that gives you 0.42 something. So that's what I put for the strength. And it was still bright when I did that. It was still brighter. So I just reset the power to 1 watt per meter squared, I guess. And it seemed to make it roughly the same brightness. So I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to look into it. I couldn't really find anything in the Blender docs to explain, why this happens. But for now, just know that if you're trying to get the same intensity, this works. I don't know, go with it. Trust me blindly. For me, the biggest game changer with this is interest, because you get the vibe from the previous one, right? With the accurate color and size of the bulb and everything. But these light fall off patterns are way more visually interesting. And what I found also is that it can really help with your composition. So just a point light, or even like if you use like a spotlight or like an area light, it can get you that directionality, but the fall off is different. And with this, you can move it around and really affect your composition and play around with that. So I have two sort of alternate angles. I just rotated the point light, and so for this one I rotated it down towards the plant, and you can see it really puts this plant into focus compared to the last one, right? It's just kind of the silhouette, and whatever's like in this main area is going to be a lot more in focus. So if you're trying to put more emphasis on the plant or whatever, this would be a good way to do that. And then here I rotated more towards camera and up. You can see like everything back there really falls into shadow. This is sort of like mid-tone, and then if you had, say, something on this wall you wanted to focus on, you could change the camera angle, whatever. Here doesn't really make sense because this wall is boring, but you could have something there and really accentuate that and put that into focus. So there are a lot of possibilities. I think if you're at the point when you're making interior renders with good models, good texturing, and it feels almost there and you haven't been doing this, try it out and see if it can kind of bring you to that final 5% or whatever. I mean, shit, you can do it anyway, whatever. It's good to know. So thank you for watching. If you found it helpful, maybe leave a like, throw me a little subscribe. I'm back, baby. I'm pretty happy I was able to find the time to get this together, record it. I'm still in midterms, but I kind of had this idea, wanted to take a little break, so here we are. Oh, and if you haven't, go check out my video on anamorphics. If you enjoyed this video, I think you'll enjoy that one as well. All right, bye.